Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. Thank you for Brittany. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Brittany Ford. I am a nutritionist and women's health biohacker, podcaster, and I'm on social media and all the things. And I don't have an official intro because I just don't think we really need one. And I have been podcasting for multiple years. This podcast is now in the top 1% globally, which is wild. So thank you for listening. And I just like to kind of keep it real. Speaking of, last week I released my birth podcast episode and my birth story, and the feedback I got was really unbelievable. So many of you sent me, DMs and messages that were so encouraging and relatable. And I was really blown away by how much support I received. If you haven't listened to that episode, I really suggest listening to it. Take the time to do it, listen to it, listen to half of it, listen to the other half later, whatever you need to do, especially if you are in your fertility era, if you are pregnant, have birth coming up, if you've had birth trauma. I really suggest listening to it. I kind of received feedback from women all over their journey. So there was some feedback from women who were like, whoa, I gave birth 2 years ago. And like so much of what you said resonated with me. I felt that exact way. This is what happened to me. I forgot that I had those same thoughts, that type of thing. For other women, it was like, I'm pregnant and I have birth coming up, and like, how do I mitigate those types of things happening, and what can I do, and how do I prepare? And it was really helpful to hear so much feedback. So thank you for everyone who sent me messages. I know apparently it made a bunch of you cry. Yeah, birth is really hard, and I can see why that would happen. I think I cried before and after the episode. I was actually just in Othership the other day, which is a sauna, hot cold therapy, basically group class in Toronto. And I was doing my cold plunge for 2 minutes, and I actually started crying during my cold plunge because I was thinking of my birth. And I was thinking, birth was way harder than this. I can do this cold plunge for 2 minutes. And I was closing my eyes. My lips were trembling because I was like taken back to the moment of birth and how I felt and everything like that. And so I'm in the process of healing, and it definitely does surface. And I want it to surface, right? Like I don't want to bury it and then maybe have another kid in a few years and then, re-experience the trauma that hasn't healed. That's not what I want to do here. So yeah, I just highly suggest listening to that episode. And if you are somebody who has been through any type of birth trauma, I just recommend kind of working on it in your own way as well. This episode is all about gentle C-sections. It's a solo episode. I'm trying to do solo episodes every Tuesday now, interviews on Friday. I think my podcast does better when I do that. I know you guys like it better. And I know when I listen to podcasts, the creators that I really resonate with, when they talk about their personal life and they talk about solo episodes and things that they're going through, I really admire that. So it's kind of like maybe the goal for this fall and winter. We'll see. So this is about gentle C-sections, gentle cesareans. I'm going to get into exactly what that is, how to create a birth plan for one of them, and the pros and cons, the difference between a gentle C-section and a regular C-section, all of these kinds of things. I actually am looking for an expert to come on to talk about this as well. I am in no way an expert. I just know from my experience and my research, but I would love to have somebody come on who can like really walk us through, the history of gentle C-sections and even C-sections in general, and like what that means and why it started and all these types of things. So I'm looking for an expert. If you know somebody, send them my way on Instagram or email me info@biohackingbrittany.com, and I would love to interview them. Before we jump in, a shout out to Bioptimizers. You guys loved their free magnesium that they did for the summer. That is now done, but I still love their magnesium, their probiotics, digestive enzymes, and their mushroom breakthrough powder. So this powder is great, especially as a mom now. This is my 2 p.m. pick-me-up. It has a bunch of functional mushrooms in it. Essentially what I do is I take 2 scoops and mix it with a tall glass of milk, different types of nut milk, whatever I have. And it's really good for energy and kind of getting over that hump. It supports the brain, memory, brain function in general, cognitive function. And that's why I love taking it. It doesn't have any caffeine, it doesn't have any stimulants, but we all know how great mushrooms are for us. So it's got like chaga in it, cordyceps, some of the other ones like that. So I think I have all the flavors. I have the chocolate, I have the salted caramel. There might be one other one that I have. Oh, the chai. Chai is really nice right now, especially for fall. Chai is really good right now. So that's what I recommend if you are interested in, a healthy, all natural pick me up. If you're a mom running around or if you're a dad, whoever you are, can be really, really helpful. And a shout out to Wellness. So I love Wellness. This is the brand by Katie Wells. She is, Wellness Mama. Everyone knows about her. And her toothpaste is phenomenal. It doesn't have any fluoride in it. It doesn't disturb the oral microbiome, which is super important. And I have all of the flavors. I have 2 of the kids' ones when my boy Callahan has his teeth come in and we're starting to brush teeth. Not anytime soon, but I have it ready to go. And I think it's like a natural strawberry flavor for the kids. And I have the whitening one, which is really nice. And she also has a charcoal toothpaste. So I really, really suggest this toothpaste. It's probably the cleanest ingredient list I've ever seen for toothpaste. Do not buy this like green washed, natural washed toothpaste that you see at the grocery store. A lot of the time, those brands are actually owned by the bigger brands. And there's like sketchy things going on there in the ingredient list that is actually not great for your oral microbiome. It's like that with a lot of products these days, same with deodorant type of idea. But I love the one by Katie Wells. Her wellness brand is phenomenal. You can definitely check that out. I will link it in the show notes. Use my discount code and you save, I think, 12%. And yeah, we all love to save a little buck here and there. So definitely do an order if you are looking for toothpaste for you or your family that is all natural and clean. All right, let's dive into a gentle C-section. Okay, so let's start from the top. Before we get into like my birth plan specifics and things like that, what the heck is a gentle C-section and, what does that even mean? So C-sections are more and more popular these days, represent about 32% of all births in the US, which is a significant number. I'm not going to get into should you get one, should you not get one? That's not my place. Planned versus unplanned, we're not even going to touch any of that. We're just going to talk about, how you can potentially make a C-section more gentle and natural and healthier for you and your baby. So with 32%, that is a significant amount. A gentle C-section, which is also called a natural cesarean or a family-oriented birth or family-centered birth, is a surgical birth that incorporates various aspects of an unmedicated vaginal birth. So it's intended to take the sterile environment of the operating room and make it more friendly, welcoming to things like immediate skin to skin with your baby, breastfeeding, and overall bonding time in those first few moments. So essentially, it's kind of taking this surgical procedure and it's adding a bit of humanity to it, is kind of how I like to look at it. Birth is such a personal, intimate time that I'm not surprised that something like a gentle C-section has kind of come out to kind of bring that personal aspect to what happens in the OR, which can feel very like you're just another surgery in and out type of idea. So there definitely are benefits of getting a gentle C-section. So it can really help with those who are kind of trying to avoid any trauma that can happen with a surgical birth. It's a way to heal and take back control in a situation in which you may otherwise feel somewhat powerless. And that was something that I definitely went through. You will hear that if you listen to my birth episode. Going into birth, having this birth plan for a gentle C-section definitely gives you some aspect of control versus, maybe you're in labor for so long and then you have to do a C-section and you haven't prepared for it. You don't know what that includes. You don't know what you should ask for. When you're prepared and when you understand what your options can be, you feel more control. You feel like you are an active participant in your birth rather than this surgery just kind of happening to you. So I really suggest, no matter where you are, if you're pregnant, like in your pregnancy or birth planning, really have a birth plan for a C-section, a gentle C-section if you want, so that you have that there that you can pull on if you need it during birth. It gives you that sense of control. It gives you that sense of power and autonomy over your body. So the first hour of a baby's life is so important. It's sometimes referred to kind of like the golden hour. And during this time, your baby typically cries, they're alert, they're active, and they're eager to breastfeed. Traditional C-sections may involve more separation between you and your baby during this short period. So essentially, they might like cut you open, take the baby, put the baby in a warmer, do all the testing on the baby, and then give the baby to you. However, a gentle C-section, on the other hand, is all about capitalizing on this bond between you two from the moment baby comes into the world, regardless of the clinical surroundings. Some other potential benefits of a gentle C-section are you may feel like you were able to be more active versus passive in your birth. Babies may have a more regulated body temperature and heart rate from early skin-to-skin contact. There's more bonding and breastfeeding for both of you. And this also, like if you choose to breastfeed, this also may help you get off to a more successful start with breastfeeding in general because you have bonding right away. I'm going to kind of talk about the difference between a traditional C-section and a gentle C-section. There are some really key differences. And then I'm going to talk about my specific birth plan so you have an example. So a traditional C-section, you wear a surgical gown and you don't necessarily have any influence over the environment of the OR. With a gentle one, you may choose to wear your own clothing if the hospital permits and have music or dimmed lights to set the tone. A traditional C-section, there are monitors set up as designated by hospital staff. In a gentle C-section, the monitors such as the pulse oximeter and electrocardiogram are purposefully positioned to lead away from the body to allow freedom of arm movement and ample space for skin-to-skin contact after birth. Traditional C-section surgery is performed with the surgical curtain up to maintain a sterile environment. So what that means, which I didn't understand necessarily before I went in, is like the curtain is between, like, it's on your ribs, essentially. So you have your breasts, and then you have the curtain, and then your whole entire stomach, vagina, legs, all of that. There's a curtain and you can't see any of it. But mind you, you're also lying flat and you're pinned down, so you wouldn't be able to see any of it anyway. But there is, like, if you lifted up your head, there is that like large curtain. It's typically blue that's in the way. The gentle C-section surgery is performed with a peekaboo curtain or a clear curtain to allow you to observe baby being born while still maintaining safety, or they can move the curtain out of the way, which we'll get into. Traditional C-section, the baby is delivered quickly, cord is cut promptly after birth. Gentle C-section, baby may be walked out of the uterus, kind of like a, gentler way of bringing the baby out. And you can request delayed cord clamping or cutting. Lastly, traditional C-section, baby is monitored and weighed by hospital staff in the first window of time after birth. In a gentle C-section, baby is moved from the uterus to your chest for skin-to-skin contact and early breastfeeding. Assessments are done at a later time whenever possible. So that kind of compares the two. You can hear, just in general, the gentle C-section is very like mom and baby relationship first versus, hey, this is a surgery. This is how we've always done things. This is the sterile way of doing it. The gentle C-section says, okay, how can we keep everyone healthy and sterile, but actually promote that bond, create less trauma for the mom, that type of idea, which I really respect. Do you have trouble recalling names, dates, or where you left things? I definitely have experienced this. Wouldn't it be nice to feel clear-minded and energized all of the time? I know you want this, and I definitely want this as well. Bioptimizers has created a one-of-a-kind product called Mushroom Breakthrough that can supercharge your brain power. It's packed with highly concentrated mushroom extracts that science shows enhance memory, focus, processing speed, and more. Just one serving contains 5 potent superfoods like collagen and 1.2 pounds of 4 concentrated mushrooms, including lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, and chaga. This cutting edge blend is a powerful way to rebuild your brain and rewire it for maximum energy, focus, and performance in less than 30 days. After each serving of Mushroom Breakthrough, your ability to memorize and recall information will improve, and you'll get a hefty dose of antioxidants for immune support. On top of these incredible benefits, it's also delicious. It tastes like a rich chocolate elixir. Sip our smooth, delicious drink daily and notice your thinking gets crisp fast. Simply mix it with water or milk and enjoy. Or for a more potent blend, you can mix it with your morning coffee to transform it into a delicious mood-boosting mocha. Don't miss out on the brain-boosting power of this amazing new product. For an exclusive offer for my listeners only, you can go to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany and use code biohackingbrittany at checkout. The great thing about Bioptimizers is that you can try it risk-free and you can use their 365-day money-back guarantee. So head over to bioptimizers.com/biohackingbrittany. Try it now to sharpen your edge and reach your potential. I actually think I'm going to go make a cup right after this. Before we get into kind of like my birth plan, there are some things that you can do when you are thinking about a C-section to have it more gentle. There are some things that you can say to your doctor or your OBGYN. Now, if you are planning a C-section, I would start this conversation as soon as possible. When I went through this, there were multiple conversations I had to have. It was not just a one and done. I actually found that I had to educate my surgeon, my doctors, my midwives on what a gentle C-section is. So that could be you. You might need to advocate for yourself in that way. You might need to educate them. So come prepared, do your research. There's lots of blog articles on this. There's lots of experiences. There's lots of people who talk about it. This is not, something that only one person has ever done. The gentle C-section is on the rise. And so it's just kind of a new name for it. So you definitely want to be asking your doctor or your healthcare provider specific questions. So you can start with are you familiar with a gentle C-section? Do you know any other doctors who've done it? Can I explain this to you? What do you think about this? You can ask are there any conditions I have that would make any of these requests not possible? Or, maybe the baby has a condition that makes it not possible. Really get into the specifics there. Maybe it's about where your placenta is located or the baby, is the baby breech or all types of things like that, really have to be taken into consideration. The next would be does the hospital have any rules in place that would make this not possible? This is going to differ per hospital. This is so important. Maybe your local hospital isn't willing to do this, but maybe if you drive 20 minutes, half an hour or an hour, whatever it is, maybe they are willing to do it. That is the type of information you need to know. And that is what you want to know earlier in pregnancy, right? So that you can be registered at that hospital. They know, in 2 months, we might have this woman come. We have all of her forms. We're ready to go. She's going to work with this surgeon, and this surgeon has agreed to this type of birth. And then are additional people permitted in the OR during birth, such as doulas, photographers, partners, etc. I think that, like I said, that conversation should happen as early as possible. I'm talking even if you're in your first trimester, if you're planning a C-section and you're okay, I actually want to do this a lot more natural and gentle, start now. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to hurt. It's definitely not going to hurt. It is much better than starting last minute and then scrambling to make a new plan. So there are some specifics that you can kind of include in your birth plan. One of the best resources that I have for this is the popular blog Mama Natural. If you are pregnant, I highly suggest you get her pregnancy book. This book changed my entire pregnancy. It guided me week after week after week. It's by Genevieve Howland. I'm actually going to try to get her on the show. I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner. Incredible, incredible book. She talks about the gentle C-section in there. She talks about everything, like literally everything you could possibly think of in terms of how to do things a bit more naturally as a mom or during pregnancy, mom to be. Really recommend her. I did her course. What did I do? I did her pregnancy course. No, I did her birth course and I did her baby course. So really, really suggest that. So she talks a lot about this. And when I was actually building my birth plans, because I had two, I took the templates from her and customized them, which I also suggest you do. So during the C-section itself, you definitely have options. I'm going to kind of read to you some of the options that you have. Again, I will kind of go, maybe I'll just say what I did after. Okay. So during the C-section itself, you can request an epidural or a spiral block versus general anesthesia. This is much more reasonable unless it's an emergency. You can request that your anesthesiologist doesn't administrate any other drugs without your consent. So for example, some drugs that help calm or sedate you throughout the C-section, but then make it difficult to concentrate on the birth. You can inquire about a clear or peekaboo drape or lifting up the drape during surgery. You can ask that monitors be placed in areas that facilitate easy movement so you can hold and breastfeed your baby after delivery. Similarly, you can ask if your gown can be moved to allow baby to have skin-to-skin contact as soon as possible. You can request to delay cord clamping and cutting until after the cord stops pulsing. And you can ask for the placenta to be saved or frozen if you plan to encapsulate it or wish to keep it for another reason. After your baby is delivered, you can clearly communicate if you'd like to breastfeed in the OR so the team may be ready to help you get into the best position. You can designate your partner, if you have one, to do skin-to-skin contact after birth if you're unable to do that for any reason, especially in the case of an emergency C-section. Or, if you have general anesthesia and you're not really conscious for that skin-to-skin contact. You can request that post-birth assessments and procedures like weighing and bathing are delayed until after optimal bonding time. And you can ask if you can hold your baby while you're being wheeled into the recovery room. Other considerations, you can request to play your own soundtrack or dim the lights. You can ask if a doula or family member can join you. And then you can also inquire about a vaginal swab, which involves your OB or your midwife or yourself, really, collecting a swab of your microbes from your vagina. And then the swab is put onto your baby's skin, mouth, or your nipples to supply a healthy microbiome, similarly to when babies are born vaginally. So that is kind of what you can ask for. I'm going to pull up my birth plan now, and I'm going to be really honest about what I did. So these were kind of my preferences, very kind of similar to what you would say, what I kind of said. So what I did is I put this all into one sheet. I guess what I could do is I could make this a PDF and you could just download it if you really wanted it from the show notes. Maybe I'll do that. So I made this into one sheet and I printed it. I really suggest that if you're giving birth in a hospital, if you're having a planned C-section or you're preparing for a C-section as like a backup, have this printed on one piece of paper, not a 5-page birth plan that they have to read. Have it icons. So it's very easy, like very visual to read, and then kind of go through that. So I did my partner to hold the baby if I am not able to for skin to skin. So he would take off his shirt and hold baby. I opted in for the vaginal swab put in the baby's mouth and on my nipples so that he could get the best microbiome possible. I did no extra drugs to relax. I wanted to be as conscious for birth as possible. I asked for monitoring devices to be placed in unobtrusive areas, like I was talking about earlier. I asked for no medication as much as possible, which is tough. I asked for free movement, limited cervical exams, intermittent monitoring prior to the C-section. So before you go into the OR, you're in a room, right? And so they're constantly kind of checking on you, checking on baby. And instead of you being hooked up the entire time, you can ask for intermittent monitoring so that you have more freedom of movement. This allows labor to be easier if you are in labor, and also kind of just it's easier to go to the bathroom, reduces anxiety, that type of thing. So intermittent monitoring. So every, 20 minutes, every half an hour, the nurse will come in, check on you, check on baby, and then remove any type of equipment that has been placed on you. I asked for the lights to be dim, Pitocin only if necessary, food and drink allowed for me, which is super important, a birth playlist, and spinal anesthesia and morphine, so no general or epidural. Clinical talk only, that was actually not something I've mentioned previously. So I did not want my surgeons and nurses to be chatting away about their weekend plans during my surgery. No, I don't want to hear about the weather. I don't want you to talk at all, unless it's about me and my surgery. So I wrote that. I said, please, low key, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear about this. Please only talk about things that are appropriate. So clinical talk only was the nice way that I wrote that. Show baby as soon as possible. So, after birth, bring up the baby above the drape. Show me my baby. And then antibiotics only after baby is out, which I'm going to get into. That one's kind of tricky. So after delivery, I wrote immediate skin to skin, delayed cord clamping, save the placenta in a cooler provided, does not go for testing. I literally wrote that, do not take my placenta away for testing. My partner is supposed to cut the cord, breastfeeding as soon as possible. The vitamin K shot is done while on me. No circumcision, no eye ointment, no bath for the baby. Delay exams for bonding until after first hour can be done while on me. No formula and no hepatitis B shot. So I'm going to kind of get into that. So that is what I wrote on my birth plan. Most of that I actually think did go according to plan. When you'll hear this in my birth story podcast, but I got really nauseous when they were sewing me back up. And so they did put baby onto me right away. They lifted up the drape. They put him underneath me on my stomach, up my body, onto my breasts and onto my neck. That was the first time that they've ever done that. And it was because I asked them and advocated for them to do that. It was really nice. I had a surgeon who was able to be a bit more progressive and open to how I wanted things, knowing how much I had lost prior to that day when I gave birth. So she did that, and that was beautiful. But then I ended up getting very nauseous when they were sewing me back up. So Callahan was on me for, I don't know how many minutes. And then they had to give him to Ryan, and he was on Ryan, and they were bonding, and I had to take Gravel and be calmed down. I was shaking like crazy, hyperventilating. I was really nauseous. So we had our skin to skin for sure, but then I kind of lost it, and that's fine. I'm happy that we got what we got. We did do the vaginal swab. My midwife kind of forgot about it. I had to remind her. Yeah, you heard that right. I had to remind her. In the room. So after the OR, you go into this room where they kind of track your vitals for an hour before you go back to your previous private room that you have. So in that middle room, I asked her, I was like, hey, did you do the vaginal swab? And she said no. And I was like, okay, cool. Thank you for doing your job. Let's do it right now. And so thankfully, I had done the swabs prior to the surgery. We had the swabs in a bag. So she swabbed on top of Callahan and everywhere like that. I did no extra drugs to relax. I didn't want them, didn't need them. We tried to have the devices in the best place possible that were kind of out of the way. I did no extra medication. Like I did no Pitocin. I did no, I don't know, whatever else there was. We did no cervical exams. We did intermittent monitoring. We did not dim the lights. We couldn't dim the lights because it was an OR. It was a surgical room, and they said absolutely not. So that did not happen. Toothpaste. We all need it and use it daily. But have you ever read the ingredients of your toothpaste or noticed the FDA poison warning on there? If not, keep on listening for some surprising information that your dentist might not be sharing with you. Fluoride has long been a common ingredient in many commercial toothpastes, hailed for its ability to prevent cavities. However, recent studies have raised concerns about the potential health risks associated with fluoride exposure. These risks include thyroid dysfunction, dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and potential neurotoxicity. Given these concerns, wellness offers a safer alternative that doesn't compromise our health, yet remains effective. Why choose Wellness toothpaste? It is founded by wellness mama Katie Wells, and Wellness is dedicated to natural health and uses hydroxyapatite instead of fluoride, a game changer in oral care. Here's why it is a better choice. It's fluoride free, eliminating all the health risks that I just talked about. The natural hydroxyapatite formula strengthens enamel and whitens your teeth. Plus, it's crafted from natural ingredients, gentle on gums, and eco-friendly. I love it. I use it all the time. I love the taste of it. And I don't think I will switch to anything else. So make the switch for yourself today to Wellness toothpaste. Visit wellness.com and use code biohackingbrittany for 12% off your order. That's wellness spelled WELLNESSE.com. Safeguard your health with wellness because your smile deserves the best. Food and drink. I had a lot of water before and after. I wasn't really hungry, to be honest. Birth playlist. I listened to the Taylor Swift Baby Method, which was phenomenal. It was playing on my phone, and my husband put the phone right by my ears. So I had the music playing during my entire surgery. And thank God I did, because it really calmed me down and helped a lot. I did the spinal anesthesia with morphine. Morphine is great. It was awesome, and it really did help. But yeah, no general and no epidural. I did clinical talk only, like I talked about. They lowered the drape. They showed the baby as soon as possible. And yeah. Okay. And so then we came to antibiotics. Now, this one is kind of tricky. I went back and forth on this a lot. I did a lot of research on antibiotics. So essentially, they give you antibiotics to reduce the chance of infection during or after the C-section. You have to think about it, right? Like they're cutting, I think it's 7 layers of body tissue to get your baby out. There is a very high chance, or there is a chance of there being an infection. And the way that they give you the antibiotics is through the IV. So it's like systemic. It's through your blood. And I, at first, was very much against this. I was thinking at the time, I haven't had antibiotics in over a decade. I don't want my baby to get antibiotics. It's not a great way for him to build a microbiome for his immune system, all of these things like that. Like it just seemed like, making it harder for him and his life from the get-go. And I was really on the fence about this. Now, I spoke to multiple people about this. This is one of the stickiest points actually in the entire C-section plan that I had. At first, after I did my ECV, I was talking to a doctor in the hospital, an OBGYN, a surgeon, and she wanted to plan my C-section. And I was talking to her about the antibiotics, and I said, look, I don't want to do them. And she offered to say, we can do it. We can administrate them through the IV after the baby has been taken out. That was kind of her compromise. Like, I know you don't want to get them in the baby, we can do, this is how we can kind of do it. And I was like, okay, like maybe that's an option, is like we put them through the IV after they're taken out. And then I was still thinking, I don't know. Do I actually want to do them in total? Probably not. I spoke to the Birthing Instincts podcast host. Let me bring up his name. Dr. Stuart Fishbein. I think that's how you say it. I'm going to try actually get him on the show. So I actually messaged him on Instagram because he, on his podcast on Birthing Instincts, they did a whole episode on gentle C-section, which was one of the only podcast episodes I found on this topic, which also was like why I wanted to record this. Because when I was going through it, I was doing research and there were like 5 episodes in total on Apple Podcasts about this topic. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, I need to know everything. I need to know more. So that's also why I'm recording this. So I messaged him and I said, hey, you're an expert in breech. You're an expert in, this child birthing space. What do you think about antibiotics during C-section? And he said that essentially, if you are limiting how many cervical exams you're doing, there might not necessarily be as strong of a reason for antibiotics. Because the cervical exams, right, is when a nurse, a doctor, midwife, whoever goes in, checks your cervix, and this can introduce different bacteria into that open area. So I did none of that. And, so I was like, okay, maybe I don't need antibiotics. However, when I was talking to who was I talking to? My surgeon, Dr. Green, who ended up doing the C-section on the day. And through other research that I did, I realized and learned that if I have an infection post-surgery, it will impact my ability to breastfeed. Because if there is an infection, then I have to go on antibiotics, go on medication. We have to treat the infection. We have to treat the wound, which then can be in my system, be in my body, and impact my milk and what I can give my baby. When I kind of realized that, when I talked through that with my surgeon, I realized that it was more important for me to be able to breastfeed than me to be able to have a microbiome in myself that has not had antibiotics. So I made that personal decision because breastfeeding is really important to me, to be able to give my baby the best nutrition possible, the best start of life possible. So that's why I made that decision to use the antibiotics. The surgeon also told me that it takes about, I think it was 7 minutes. Was it 12 minutes? I think, okay, so let's say 7 to 12 minutes. It takes about 7 to 12 minutes for those antibiotics to hit the baby, to impact the baby, because they go through the IV, they come into my blood, then my liver has to obviously go through them, detoxify, whatever you want to call it, filter it. Let's say it's probably a better word. Then it has to go through the placenta. Then it goes through my baby. So it's not like ASAP, right? And she said, by the time we take your baby out, it's such a fast surgery because it has to be, because it's such a massive open wound, that the amount of antibiotics in my baby would be very, very limited, if any at all. So when I talked through that and said, okay, you're going to give me the antibiotics in this IV, you're going to cut me open, take out baby within that time frame before he gets a mega dose of them or any of them at all. Okay, that makes sense. This is a fast thing. That's fine. And again, I want to be able to breastfeed. I don't want an infection. So that was the reasoning that I made that decision. You make the best decision for yourself. Just know that if you are going to say no antibiotics, you have to sign a waiver. You have to sign a lot of consent forms. And so if you get an infection, you can't sue the hospital, you can't sue the surgeons, et cetera, right? So that was one of the hardest things that was sticky when I was talking to all these different people, midwives, different surgeons, when I was going through my birth. It would take a very, very strong-minded person who can advocate for themselves to say no to antibiotics. Not saying you can't do it, but be prepared to really stand like in your opinion, stand up for yourself and know that you're going to get a lot of pushback. But if it's the right thing for you, then by all means do it. Again, for me, I took the antibiotics. I think I'm a healthy enough individual to have my body rebound. It's a fast surgery. I don't want the infection, and I've had no infection. I'm now 9 weeks post-birth. Thankfully, knock on wood, let's hope that, there is no infection to come. So I think I did the right thing. Okay. After delivery, immediate skin to skin. I kind of talked about that already. We did do the delayed cord clamping. Now, my delayed cord clamping was about a minute. The other hospital I looked at said they could do it for 2 minutes. Unfortunately, I have not in Canada, in Ontario, I've not seen more than that with a C-section. I think if you do a home birth, I think if you do a vaginal birth, it's very different. With a C-section, you have an open wound and they need to close you up as soon as possible. That is priority. That is the safety of the mother. That is the health of the mother that they really, are advocating for and are trying to take care of. So as much as I would have loved for the cord to be connected for half an hour or an hour, kind of like they do in a lotus birth, where, they leave the placenta attached to the cord to the baby until it dries up essentially. Or I guess the lotus birth is actually when it falls off naturally. But to leave it for as long as possible, they were not willing to do that at all. So they were willing to wait at least 1 minute instead of cutting it right away. And I saw them do this. They lifted Callahan up over the drape. I saw the cord attached to him. So I know that they did it properly. They told me afterwards. So I'm grateful for that. I had my partner cut the cord. He did not really care about doing this. I cared because I wanted less medical professionals involved as possible. I didn't want a nurse doing it. I just wanted Ryan to do it. Yeah, it was more of a me thing than a him thing. He said it was really hard and it was really cool. Mine was white. My umbilical cord was white, basically, and it was spiraled. I have a photo of it. It was really funky. I have no idea why it looked like that, but it was really beautiful. And yeah. And then save the placenta. So we did this. We put it into, I did not actually see this happen. Obviously, I had a lot going on. They saved the placenta and it got put into a little cooler that was provided. And we had it encapsulated, which will be a whole nother episode. So it got picked up from the hospital. We made tinctures, capsules. I have a placenta print, a piece of artwork that this placenta encapsulator did. She's also a doula, so she did that for me. And I'm so grateful for that. Breastfeeding ASAP. We did not breastfeed in the OR. This was, I got really nauseous and it was not something that was possible for me. I was shaking like crazy. I was also very cold. The OR room is freezing. So this was not something that I was able to do, even though, it would have been nice. We did skin to skin right away, but we did not breastfeed until we got to, I don't even think we breastfed in the in-between room because my temperature was so low, they had to warm me up for an hour. Yeah, I don't think we did until we got back to our private room. And also it was really hard. Breastfeeding was hard in the beginning because you only have colostrum and baby's learning to latch, it was a whole thing. But we're great now. But yeah, it was definitely a learning curve. So vitamin K shots, this is also a personal preference. There's many different ways to do this. There's many opinions on the vitamin K. So my thinking with vitamin K was that, again, I looked at the Mama Natural book that I had. I read everything she said about vitamin K, and I decided that this was the best way for us to do it. There's a lot to say about vitamin K. Okay. We decided on the shot because I wanted to mitigate any risk of bleeding out. And that's what vitamin K does. It helps clot the blood. That's why it is given to babies Vitamin K is not something the babies have when they are first born. And so this helps clot the blood if there is an accident. Like if you drop the baby, if they hit their head, if they start bleeding, it helps clot the blood and it is for their safety. Now, something to note with this is like, it's not just if you drop the baby or they cut themselves or something like that. Like there can be internal bleeding that happens for some sort of reason that we don't know. Like the brain could start bleeding. There's things that happen, right, in life and with health that are out of our control. And for me, when I was looking at my options of no vitamin K drops, or vitamin K shot, and the risk of having the lack of blood clotting, I decided that the vitamin K shot was the best defense against that. Now, the vitamin K drops are something that you can do. They are very hard to get. The ones that are actually healthy and don't have any extra garbage in them or additives in them, I think you have to order from Europe, and you can find that information online. And you have to follow a very strict schedule of giving your baby those vitamin K drops. So I think when they're first born, it's like 3 times a day. And then after 2 weeks, it's like 2 times a day. Like there's this whole schedule that you have to follow. And for me as a first-time mom, it was too much for me to figure out what drops to get, order them in from Europe to Canada, make sure that I have enough, make sure that I follow this schedule. Like it was too much for me to handle on top of the birth that I was going through, of having a newborn, of everything that I went through in the last few weeks of my pregnancy. It was too much for me to handle. And that's why I decided the vitamin K shot was the best. Now, how I really feel about vitamin K is that I think we have a lack of research in this space. What I mean by that is we have not looked at the composition of breast milk and how much vitamin K is in breast milk, how much is given to babies, how it increases their levels. There's been no research on that. There's been no studies on that, right? So even when I was looking into this, I was like, okay, what if I increase my vitamin K levels and I breastfeed and I give it to my baby? Will that be enough? But there's no concrete evidence on this, and there's no concrete research on this to say that, unfortunately. So how I really feel is that I would love to be able to say, I took vitamin K my whole pregnancy. My levels are blank, which means when I breastfeed, I'm going to be able to give my baby this amount and they will be fine. That's what I really wanted to do. However, there's no, evidence to back that up. There's no research to back that up. And I didn't feel confident in doing that. So I chose to do the shot instead. I don't even know if I've ever had my vitamin K levels checked, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I've done a ton of blood work and a ton of testing, and I don't think I've ever seen my vitamin K levels. So it would be something that I would be interested in. The other perspective as well, which I was thinking about when I was deciding this, is like, why in the first place are babies' vitamin K levels low? Like, why? Why did nature design babies like that? So I don't necessarily know the answer to that. And, if I'm thinking this through right now, it's likely that, mama does give baby enough through breast milk, right? Like there is probably that like symbiotic relationship there that through breast milk, baby does get enough. Their levels are lower for maybe it's something to do with the placenta, with the blood clotting that, it doesn't make sense to have high levels of vitamin K when they come out of the womb. And then, mama increases it through breast milk. Maybe that's kind of how that all works. I wish I knew more. I wish there was more research, but for me, the vitamin K shot was worth it. When we did the shot, he was on me. It was in his foot. And so we kind of like mitigated any pain and discomfort through that way. No circumcision. Again, this is a personal preference. This is something that, is very religious. It is philosophical. Depends how you stand on that. We decided not to do that. This is like so personal that I'm sharing, but that's fine because I feel like more people need to know. In Canada now, I don't know how it is in the States, but you have to pay to get this done. It's $500 and it happens in less than 10% of baby boys in Canada now. So it is very much like I said, religious or philosophical thing. And any health benefits have been disproven. And so it didn't make sense for us to move forward with it. No eye ointment. So this eye ointment, just so you know, is antibiotics, antibacterial. And in Canada, it used to be that it was always given to babies. Now they are actually currently changing that mandate and removing it because they have done research on it to show there's new research that came out in the last few years that basically showed it was not helpful. The reason there is eye ointment in the first place is to reduce the chance of blindness if mom has any type of STI, so sexual transmitted infection. I forget which one it is. I'd have to look it up. But basically there was an association, I guess, between a baby being born vaginally through a mom who has this type of infection or disease, whatever you want to call it, and an increase in blindness to the mom, to the baby. So then there was this eye ointment that was given that has antibiotics in it to reduce that chance of happening. It has now been proven that the antibiotics, this eye ointment really doesn't do anything. And so it is actually being taken out of the mandated medical birth situation in Canada. So we opted out of it. Even before I saw that it was being taken out of Canada, I was like, this is stupid. We're not doing this. This is unnecessary. So we did not do that at all. Again, like why medicate for something that potentially could happen in this way? Like I got checked for all my STIs, STDs, everything like during pregnancy, and I was completely clean bill of health. And when you're planning for a C-section, baby doesn't even go through you vaginally. So like it seemed even more like unnecessary for him to get any sort of eye ointment. We did no bath. So we did not bath Callahan until he was a week old. Multiple reasons for this. One, as if I would let anybody bath him in a hospital. No. Why? Why would I let you touch my baby more? Why would I let you use whatever harsh soap that you have? No, a hard pass, absolutely hard pass on this. And when you look at the skin microbiome, when a baby comes out, they have this kind of like natural film on there that ends up peeling off. And I wanted my baby, I keep saying my baby, I wanted Callahan's skin to be able to do that naturally. I wasn't about to go in with like this water. How healthy is the water? Is it filtered? Does it have all types of things in it that's now being exposed to his skin? Are you using soap? Like, no, it was just a hard pass. So we did not bath him for the first week, even when we were at home. It was like, why? He's not dirty, right? Like babies don't sweat. There's no sweat. Those sweat glands aren't properly developed. We're not out in the dirt. There's nothing for him to be cleaned off. And then now when we bathe him, when we did bath him, we use only water. Like I do not use any soap whatsoever on him. He's 2 months old. I don't know when I will ever use soap. I think we used soap. I used it once when he came into contact with somebody who had COVID. Not that soap really helps with COVID, but anyway, I was just a little like, let's just kind of give me a little bit of peace of mind somehow. So I think we've used soap on him once, and I don't plan on using soap, I don't know, at all for the first year, really, maybe even further. I don't use soap really, so I don't see why we need it. I think the skin is able to regulate itself. The microbiome on the skin is very sensitive, and so any type of cleaning can really disrupt that sensitive microbiome. Obviously, if you're dirty, it's different, right? Like if you have a bunch of paint on you or mud or whatever it is, like it's different, but still you can do a lot with water and just like scrubbing. So we did no bath and that was no problem at all. They did not care. we delayed exams until after the first hour, and we did them while they were on me. So they looked at, his eyes, his heart rate, everything while he was on me, or while Ryan was holding him when I was like, I couldn't, and I was shaking too much and too sick. And then they weighed him like an hour later in front of me in that like middle room that we were in, which was really nice. And then did his measurements and everything like that. He was 8 pounds, 13 ounces. And he was, oh my gosh, was he 49 inches? Does that make sense? No, that does not make sense. 49 centimeters or 52 centimeters, something like that. I have it on my little form that he got. And that was fine. They were totally fine with doing that. When he was born, they did do the APGAR score right away because they kind of have to. He had an 8 and then he had a 10. So the APGAR is an assessment that they do at 1 minute after birth and then at 5 minutes. It kind of just looks at their vitals. My midwife said like he should have been a 10 for the first one. So like, she didn't agree with whatever reasoning that they gave for the 8. And that was that. We did no formula. I started pumping colostrum, the last month of my pregnancy into little syringes, and I was freezing them, and I brought one of them with me because there was no way that they were going to give him formula. So I did that, and I did no hepatitis B shot, which was fine as well. So that's kind of like everything that I did. You can kind of hear that a lot of it does go with the gentle C-section plan. There were a few things that didn't, but all in all, I would say knowing what a gentle C-section is, I probably did about 90% of it. And I really, really advocated for myself to do it. So if you're listening, go download Mama Natural's birth plan, get her book, read about gentle C-sections, listen to the podcast episodes, read the blog articles, go on YouTube, whatever platform that you like, and get educated. Start talking to your healthcare providers as soon as possible about this. Print out your gentle C-section birth plan. Make it 1 page. Identify everything. Talk to your partner and make sure everybody's on the same page about everything, right? Like I reviewed my plan with Ryan so many times because I said, if I am not able to vocalize this during it, I need you to. If I find out that he didn't do the vaginal swab or he got eye ointment, like I need you to advocate for this when I can't. So make sure you have those conversations and be prepared. With birth, you cannot over prepare. Okay. That is like my sentiment. You cannot over prepare. So know that it's not going to go 100% according to plan. Expect the unexpected, but also be as prepared as you can be. I hope this was helpful for you. I wish I had this episode when I was going through my last few weeks of pregnancy. I hope this provided guidance and inspiration that if you are planning a C-section or you have to have an emergency one, or you're just having a plan B and you just want to know what's going on if there is a C-section, I hope that this gives you power and control over your birth in some way so that when you're in the OR, you're having a say in these decisions. You're having some sort of control and some connection to your birth. That's what I want from you. And I hope this episode gave that to you. Thank you for listening. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. My podcast is growing really quickly and I'm just like loving this new motherhood era that I'm in. My content is very much reflective of that. So if you're a mom to be, please stick around, subscribe. Every single person helps. Follow me on Instagram at biohackingbrittany. You can always send me feedback if you want to say, hey, this is what I thought about your birth plan or gentle C-sections. Like hit me up, let's chat. And thank you for listening. And I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm most active. My handle is @biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.